The flashlight's beam stabbed into my eyes, blinding, as the officer's voice sneered. "Who do you think you are, lady?" My heart slammed against my ribs, but I kept my hands locked on the steering wheel, refusing to let them see me shake. "I'm Zara Brooks, a 40-year-old black architect, and moments ago, I was driving home from a fundraiser in Miami's Coconut Grove, my silver gown still clinging to my skin. Now, at 12:03 a.m., I was pinned under the glare of two white cops, Ruiz and Callahan, their cruiser's blue lights pulsing like a predator's heartbeat. They'd pulled me over on Ocean Drive, 3 miles from the precinct. No reason given, just a smirk that said my BMW didn't belong to me. Ruiz, wiry with a cruel tilt to his mouth, leaned into my window, his breath sour. "Fancy dress," he said. "You borrow it for the night." Callahan, broad and silent, loomed behind him, his eyes raking over me like I was evidence of a crime. I'm no stranger to this. Black drivers in Florida face stops 2.8 times more than whites, a fact I'd learned advocating for fair housing. But this wasn't a statistic. This was me, alone, my pulse racing, knowing one wrong move could end everything. I kept my voice steady, a skill honed from years of pitching designs to skeptical boards. "This is my car," I said, meeting Ruiz's gaze. His smirk widened, the flashlight unwavering like he was daring me to blink. "You look misplaced," he said, the word dripping with intent. Callahan muttered, "Bet it's her boyfriend's." Ryder's chuckle low, cutting, the words hit like a slap. But I thought of my son, Jaden 16, asleep at home, who'd soon drive these streets. I couldn't let fear win. I tapped my smartwatch, whispering, "Justice, stream, live, Ocean Drive." My app, built with a local activist group, sent my location to 12,000 followers, streaming the stop in real time. Comments flooded my phone, vibrating in my lap. "Stay safe, Zara. This is messed up." I felt their presence, a digital shield, but my chest tightened. Ruiz demanded my license. "No explanation. Routine," he said, his tone a challenge. I handed it over, slow, deliberate, my every move a defiance of their script. Callahan circled my car, peering inside, muttering about my laptop bag. "No warrant, just power." They wielded like a club. Ruiz's taunts sharpened. "Big event," he said, leaning closer, his flashlight hot on my cheek. "You sure you're not out of your lane?" The implication was clear. A black woman in luxury was a thief, a fraud. My anger surged, but I channeled it into silence, a weapon I'd learned from my grandmother, a civil rights organizer. "They'll try to break you," she'd said, "but you're steel, Zara." I was, but inside I ached for every black person stopped, searched, dismissed. My stream hit 18,000 viewers, their outrage fueling me. Callahan tapped his baton, pacing. "Open that bag," he said. "No request." I swallowed, my voice firm. "Not without a warrant." Ruiz laughed. "Don't play lawyer, sweetheart." The word burned, but I held steady, my stream now at 25,000, a chorus shouting. They got no right. I wasn't alone, but I was. But target, my skin their only proof. Ruiz, the main villain, wasn't just a cop, he was a predator. His cruelty, deliberate, honed. I saw it in his eyes, a glint of joy at my discomfort, a man who thrived on control. He'd been cited twice for excessive force, I'd later learn, but Chief Vargas, Miami's police head, had buried the complaints, calling them misunderstandings. Ruiz leaned closer, his voice a hiss. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said, his flashlight flicking to my gown's neckline, lingering too long. My stomach churned, but I thought of Jaden, his dreams of college, his trust in me. I couldn't falter. My silence wasn't fear, it was a vow, a refusal to let Ruiz win. The stream's comments raged. "This guy's a creep. Where's backup?" I felt their hope, their fear mirroring mine. Then, headlights pierced the scene. A black Range Rover pulled up, silent but commanding. My wife, Lena Carter, stepped out, a 42-year-old federal civil rights attorney with the DOJ. Her navy suit was sharp, her presence sharper, 5'8" of unyielding truth. Her braids swung as she moved, her badge catching the light. My chest eased, but I stayed still, knowing Ruiz wouldn't back down easily. "Officers," Lena said, her voice calm but iron. Step away from my wife. Ruiz's flashlight froze, his smirk faltering. Callahan's hand twitched, but Lena's gaze steady, dissecting, made the air heavy. "I'm Lena Carter, DO," she said. "State your grounds for this stop." Ruiz stammered. "Routine patrol." Lena's eyes narrowed. "No citation, no cause, no body cam log." "That's not patrol, that's harassment." I stepped out, my gown catching the breeze, standing beside Lena, our bond a fortress. "She's my wife," I said, my voice a blade. The stream hit 30,000, viewers cheering. "Yes, Lena, end this now." Lena pulled her tablet, displaying a file. "For prior stops by Ruiz and Callahan, all black drivers, all dismissed." "You've got a pattern," she said, her tone surgical. My heart swelled, not with relief, but with purpose. We weren't just fighting Ruiz, we were fighting a system that shielded him. I handed over my recorder, its light blinking, every taunt captured. Ruiz's face tightened, Callahan's jaw dropped. but they didn't move. An unmarked car rolled up. An internal affairs observer, alerted by the stream's 35,000 viewers. Ruiz's eyes darted, his cruelty now a trap closing. Around him, Lena didn't flinch. "You targeted Zara because of her race," she said, citing my housing advocacy. "This stops here." The stream erupted. "Justice, we're watching." For me, this was more than a moment, it was a breaking point. I'd faced this before, 5 years ago, when my complaint against Ruiz was buried, labeled unsubstantiated. I'd carried that silence, let it scar me, but tonight it became my power. I thought of my grandmother, her marches, her arrests, her unbowed spirit. My stream, my recorder, Lena's badge, they were tools, but my heart was the fire. I wasn't just Zara Brooks, architect, mother, wife. I was a voice for the silenced, a mirror for the blind. Ruiz's smirk was gone. His flashlight lowered, but his eyes burned with defiance. A villain unrepentant, plotting his next move. Callahan shifted, uneasy, a secondary player caught in Ruiz's shadow, his silence complicity. I stood taller, my gown shimmering, my resolve iron. Lena's hand grazed mine, a quiet anchor. The stream kept rolling. 40,000 now, a digital jury. I thought of Jaden, his future, his right to drive without fear. My silence had spoken louder than Ruiz's taunts, Callahan's stares, their badges. The night crackled, not with peace, but with promise of storm brewing, one Ruiz couldn't outrun. I knew this was just the start, but for the first time, I felt the ground tremble, not beneath me, but beneath them. As Lena faced Ruiz, her voice a verdict, I caught his glance, a flicker of fear, a crack in his armor. He wasn't done, but neither were we, and the weight of our truth was heavier than his lies. I stood beside Lena, my silver gown catching the faint glow of Miami's streetlights, my heart pounding with a mix of relief and resolve. The blue lights from Ruiz and Callahan's cruiser still pulsed, but their authority was crumbling under Lena's gaze. Her DOJ badge a quiet thunder in the night. "I'm Zara Brooks, a 40-year-old black architect, and just minutes ago, I'd been pinned by their flashlights. Their taunts, whose car is this?" cutting deeper than any blade. Now, with my wife Lena Carter, a federal civil rights attorney, by my side, the air felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Ruiz, the wiry officer with a predator's glint, gripped his flashlight tighter, his smirk gone but his eyes burning with defiance. Callahan, his broader partner, shifted, uneasily, his silence a shadow of complicity. My smartwatch stream, broadcasting to 40,000 viewers on Justice stream, hummed with comments. "Lena's got this. Don't let them walk." I felt their presence, a digital army, but the real battle was here, on Ocean Drive, where Ruiz's cruelty had met its match. Lena's voice sliced through the tension, calm but unyielding. "You've violated protocol," she said, her tablet glowing with evidence for prior stops by Ruiz and Callahan. All black drivers, all buried by Chief Vargas. No grounds, no record, no accountability. "Explain." Ruiz's jaw twitched, his fingers flexing. A man used to bending rules, not answering for them. "We're doing our job," he snapped, his voice thin, like he was trying to convince himself. Callahan nodded, but his eyes darted to the unmarked internal affairs car idling nearby, its observer a silent threat. I saw Ruiz's calculation, his pride warring with fear, a villain who thrived on control, now cornered by truth. Lena didn't flinch. "Your job isn't to harass," she said, citing my housing advocacy. "Zara's a leader in fair housing. You stopped her because she's black, driving a BMW, looking like she belongs." The words landed like a verdict, and I felt a surge of pride, not for me, but for us, for every black person who'd faced this and kept standing. I handed Lena my recorder, its red light blinking, capturing Ruiz's taunts, Callahan's chuckles. "Play it," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. Lena pressed a button, and Ruiz's voice echoed, "You're sure you're not out of your lane, sweetheart?" The words, crude and deliberate, hung in the air, undeniable. Ruiz's face tightened, his eyes narrowing, not with shame but with rage. Man who'd never been held accountable, now exposed to 45,000 viewers. Callahan stepped back, his baton slipping to his side, his loyalty to Ruiz wavering. The stream's comments exploded. "That's disgusting. Fire them." I thought of my son Jaden, 16, who'd watch this one day, learning not to bow to men like Ruiz. My silence had been my shield, but now it was a sword, cutting through their lies. Lena seized the moment, her voice a beacon. "This isn't isolated," she said, turning to the internal affairs observer. "These officers have a history, protected by Chief Vargas, who's buried 47 complaints since 1998. She held up her tablet, showing a leaked email from Vargas. "Dismissed Brooks' 2019 complaint, no pattern." My heart sank, remembering that stop 5 years ago. Ruiz's same smirk, his same flashlight, my same fear. I'd filed a report, waited for justice, and got silence. Now that silence was breaking. Lena's eyes met mine, a vow between us, forged in years of fighting bias in courtrooms and boardrooms. "We're done letting this slide," she said, her words for the officers, the observer, the world watching. I nodded, my gown shimmering, my resolve iron. This wasn't just about MIT, it was about every black driver who'd been erased. Ruiz, defiance flared, his voice a hiss. You think you're untouchable, DOJ lady, he said, stepping closer, his flashlight now at his side, a prop he didn't need. The city runs on order, not your fancy apps. His words were a dare, a glimpse into his mind, a man who saw power as his birthright, black success as a threat. I saw his history and his sneer. 2 excessive force complaints, both buried. His badge, a shield, Vargas polished. Lena didn't back down. Order doesn't mean oppression, she said, her voice cutting deeper than his taunts. You've got no body cam footage, no log, no cause. You're not audio chaos. Callahan's face paled, his eyes flicking to Ruiz, a follower caught in a leader's fall. The observer stepped out, a woman in plain clothes, her notepad open, her presence a weight Ruiz couldn't ignore. I felt the stream's pulse, now 50,000 strong, a chorus of rage and hope. Lena turned to her phone, her fingers swift. Am I starting a challenge, she said, posting on X. Share your story of unjust stops. #TruthImmune. Within minutes, replies flooded in. A teacher in Chicago, a nurse in Houston, a student in Oakland, their stories mirroring mine. My chest swelled, not with victory, but with connection. We weren't alone. Lena's challenge was a spark, igniting, a fire Ruiz couldn't douse. I thought of my grandmother, marching in Birmingham, her voice drowned out but never silenced. They'll try to shut you up, she'd said, but truth finds a way. It was finding one now, through my stream. Lena's words, the observer's pen. Ruiz's eyes darted, his control slipping. You're making a mistake, he said, his voice low, a threat wrapped in calm. Vargas won't let this stick. His mention of the chief was a lifeline, a reminder of the system that had shielded him for years. Vargas, a 30-year veteran, had built an empire of silence, redacting complaints, spinning misunderstandings to protect men like Ruiz. I saw it in Ruiz's stance, his belief that this, too, would vanish. Lena's response was steel. Vargas can't hide this, she said, gesturing to my watch. The stream now at 60,000. The world's watching, and they won't forget. I felt their eyes, their hearts, a nation waking up. My fear, once a cage, was now a key, unlocking, a truth too big to bury. Callahan broke, his voice shaky. We didn't mean no harm, he said, stepping away from Ruiz, his baton dangling. His betrayal stung Ruiz, whose eyes flashed with fury. Shut up, Cal, he snapped, but the crack in their unity was clear. Callahan was no villain, just a man who'd followed too long, his silence a choice he now regretted. I pitied him, but pity didn't erase his role. Lena pressed forward, her tablet glowing with more file screenshots of Vargas's orders, timestamps of buried cases. This isn't just you two, she said. It's a system, and it's breaking. The observer scribbled faster, her face unreadable but her pen relentless. I thought of Jaden, his dreams, his right to drive without fear. This was for him. For every kid who'd inherit these streets. Ruiz's defiance wavered, his flashlight now at his hip, useless. You don't scare me, he lied, his voice cracking, a man who'd never faced a mirror. I saw his fear not of us, but of losing the shield Vargas had given him. Lena's challenge grew. #truth, UNMUTED trending. Stories pouring in hundreds, then thousands. My stream hit 70,000. A digital revolution. I stood taller, my gown a banner, my silence a roar. Lena's hand grazed mine, our love a fortress against Ruiz's hate. This is your last free pass, she said to him, her voice a promise. The observer stepped closer, her notepad a verdict waiting to be written. Ruiz's eyes met mine, a flicker of panic, a villain seeing his empire tremble. I felt the weight of every black person stopped. Their stories now rising through #truth, UNMUTED. My grandmother's voice echoed, truth don't need volumes, it needs courage. I had it, we had it. Lena's challenge wasn't just a post-it, was a movement, a call for every silenced voice to speak. I thought of my advocacy, my designs for equitable housing, my fight for spaces where black families could thrive. This was another space, another fight, and we were winning. Ruiz's face hardened, his hand twitching, a man plotting his next move. Callahan looked away, his shame a shadow. The stream's comments roared, end this. Justice now. I knew this wasn't over. Ruiz's defiance. Vargas's shadow loomed large, but for the first time, I felt the ground shift, not beneath me, but beneath them, a crack in their armor we'd widen with truth. The Miami night clung to me, the heat of Ruiz's flashlight still lingering on my skin as Lena and I drove away from Ocean Drive. The cruiser's blue lights fading in my rear view. I'm Zara Brooks, a 40-year-old black architect, and just hours ago, I'd faced down officers Ruiz and Callahan, their taunts, fancy dress, you sure you're not lost? A reminder of the racism that shadowed every mile I drove. Lena, my wife, a DOJ civil rights attorney, had turned the tide, her badge in our recorder exposing their misconduct to 70,000 viewers on Justice Stream. But the fight wasn't over. Ruiz's parting glare, His hissed promise that Chief Vargas would make this go away burned in my mind. He wasn't just a rogue cop. He was a symptom, a foot soldier for a system that thrived on silencing voices like mine. In our Coconut Grove apartment, the hum of my laptop felt like a heartbeat as I opened files from my housing advocacy, cross-referencing them with Lena's DOJ access. We weren't just fighting for me, we were unearthing a machine that had buried 47 complaints since 1998. All under Vargas's watch. Lena sat across from me, her braids pulled back, her eyes sharp as she scrolled through a leaked database. Vargas redacted your 2019 complaint, she said, her voice low but laced with fire. He called it unsubstantiated, but it's here, same officers, same pattern. My chest tightened, remembering that stop 5 years ago. Ruiz, its smirk, identical, his flashlight just as cruel. I'd filed a report, poured my heart into it, only to be dismissed. Now, Lena's tablet glowed with proof. Emails from Vargas ordering officers to resolve complaints without investigation. Timestamps of deleted body cam footage. Names of black drivers, teachers, nurses, fathers erased from record. They felt their stories, their silences, heavy in my bones. We can't let this stay hidden, I said, my voice trembling not with fear but with purpose. Lena nodded, her hand grazing mine. I'll love a quiet anchor. We won't, she said. Let's make it public. We built a digital archive, scanning every document, every email, every buried case. My fingers shook as I uploaded it to a public server, my heart racing with the weight of what we were doing. Lena drafted a statement, her words precise. This is the truth Miami PD hid. #TruthUNMUTED. I posted it on X, my watch buzzing as the archive went live. By 3 a.m. it had 150,000 downloads. The Miami Herald and CNN picking it up. Miami PD exposed. Decades of racial cover-ups. Comments flooded in. This is sickening. Thank you, Zara and Lena. I felt their rage, their hope, mirroring mine. But Vargas wasn't silent. At a press conference, his silver hair glinting under camera lights, he leaned into the mic, his voice smooth, practiced. These are isolated errors, not systemic bias, he said, framing us as overzealous activists. His lie was a blade, but I saw his eyes cold, calculating a man who'd built a career on erasure, his power rooted in making people like me invisible. Ruiz, Vargas's loyal enforcer, was the face of that system on the street. I saw his cruelty in my mind, his smirk, his taunts, his belief that black success was a crime. Lena found his record, 3 complaints for excessive force, all buried by Vargas, who'd promoted him to sergeant. Vargas wasn't just a chief, he was an architect of silence, his office a vault where truth went to die. I thought of my son Jaden, 16, who'd texted me during the stream, "Mom, you okay?" I hadn't answered, too focused on surviving now. I wanted him to know his mother wasn't just surviving, she was fighting. Lena and I planned a virtual town hall, a space for victims to speak. I posted the invite on X. Share your story. #TruthMU. By noon, 60,000 had RSVP'd from Atlanta to Seattle. My heart swelled, not with pride, but with connection. Every voice was a crack in Vargas's wall. The town hall streamed that night, my laptop screen glowing with faces. A nurse from Dallas, stopped for suspicious driving. A teacher from Chicago searched for looking nervous. A father from Oakland profiled for his car's tinted windows. Their stories echoed mine, their pain a mirror. I spoke first, my voice steady but raw. I'm Zara Brooks, and 5 years ago, I was stopped by the same officer who targeted me last night. My complaint was buried, but tonight, we're unburying the truth. Lena followed, her words a vow. This isn't one officer, one stop. It's a system, and we're dismantling it. The chat exploded. We're with you. Don't stop. I felt their strength, a nation waking up, but also their grief, heavy as my own. A woman named Keisha, 32, shared her story, her voice breaking as she described being stopped while pregnant. Her car searched without cause, they said. I didn't belong, she whispered. I wiped a tear, thinking of my grandmother, who'd faced dogs and hoses but never bowed. You belong, I said, my voice a lifeline. We all do. Vargas fought back, his team leaking my 2019 complaint to paint me as a troublemaker. The Miami Sun ran it, but the public saw through the spin, rallying with #WeStandWithZara. On X, a retired officer posted, Vargas trained us to look away. I'm sorry. His words hit me, not as redemption, but as proof the system wasn't broken. It was built this way. Lena uncovered more, a 1998 wrongful arrest case, a black teenager brutalized under Vargas's command. The report buried. I felt the weight of that boy, now a man, his story echoing mine. We added it to the archive, each file a brick and a monument to truth. The town hall grew, 80,000 viewers, stories pouring in like rain. I saw Ruiz's face in my mind, his defiance, a shadow of Vargas's arrogance, a man who believed he'd always win because the chief had his back. But the ground was shifting. Protests formed outside Miami's City Hall, silent but fierce, with signs listing names: Keisha, Jamal, Aisha. I joined one, standing in the crowd, my gown replaced by jeans, my presence a promise. A young man, 25, held a sign, Zara you, gave me my voice. My throat tightened, not with pride, but with responsibility. Lena's challenge, #truth, UNMUTED, had grown to 500,000 posts. Stories from every corner of the US. I thought of Jaden, his future, his right to drive without fear. This was for him, for every kid who'd inherit these streets. Vargas's press conference aired, his voice smoother now, promising internal reviews, but his eyes betrayed him a flicker of fear, a man who'd never faced a mirror. Ruiz, I knew, was watching, his cruelty tied to Vargas's power, his fate now uncertain. Lena and I sat late, our apartment quiet but alive with purpose. She showed me a new file, Vargas's signature on a 2001 directive to prioritize high-value vehicles in certain areas. Code for profiling black drivers. My anger flared, but I channeled it, thinking of my grandmother's words. Angers, a spark, Zara truths the fire. We were the fire now, our archive ablaze no one could extinguish. The town hall's impact lingered, voices still echoing in my mind. Keisha's tears, a father's rage, a student's hope. I felt their weight, their trust, pushing me forward. Lena's hand found mine, her resolve my anchor. We're not done, she said, her voice a vow. I nodded, my heart steady. Ruiz's face flashed again, his defiance a fading echo, but Vargas loomed larger, a villain whose empire was cracking but not yet fallen. The stream's pulse, now 100,000, was our heartbeat, a nation demanding truth. I knew this was only the beginning, but for the first time, I felt the system tremble, its silence no match for ours. The weight of our truth pressed against my chest as Lena and I stood outside Miami's City Hall. The morning sun glinting off the building's glass facade, a stark contrast to the shadows we'd uncovered. I'm Zara Brooks, a 40-year-old black architect, and just days ago I'd faced officers Ruiz and Callahan, their racist taunts exposed to 100,000 viewers on Justice Stream. Lena, my wife and a DOJ civil rights attorney, had turned our personal battle into a public reckoning. Our digital archive of Chief Vargas's cover-ups, 47 buried complaints since 1998, igniting a firestorm. Now, as we watched silent protesters line the steps, their signs bearing names of the silenced, I felt their hope, their rage, their trust. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with purpose. Vargas, the architect of this silence, was still fighting, his press conferences spinning, lies, but the ground was shifting. Ruiz, his loyal enforcer, was suspended, his cruelty a fading echo, but Vargas's empire loomed, a villain whose power was cracking under the weight of our evidence. I thought of my son Jaden, 16, whose text, "Mom, you're a hero," had kept me awake, not with pride, but with responsibility. This wasn't just our fight, it was for every black driver who'd been stopped, dismissed, erased. The city council chamber buzzed, cameras flashing as Lena and I entered, not as heroes, but as witnesses. The air was thick with tension, council members shifting in their seats, aware of the 200,000 signature petition demanding reform. I felt their eyes, not all friendly, but I stood tall, my jeans a quiet rebellion against the gown I'd worn that night. Lena, her braids tight, her suit sharp, spoke first, her voice a blade of truth. "You've seen the archive," she said, holding up a tablet glowing with Vargas's redacted files. "This isn't one stop, it's a system, designed to protect men like Ruiz, enabled by men like Vargas." The room stilled, her words landing like a gavel. I stepped forward, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. "I'm Zara Brooks. Stopped 5 years ago, stopped last week, both times by Ruiz, both times buried by Vargas. I'm not here to beg, I'm here to demand accountability." The audience, packed with activists, families and reporters, leaned forward, their silence a chorus of agreement. I thought of my grandmother, her marches in Birmingham, her voice drowned out but never broken. "We're not asking for change," I said, "we're requiring it." The council moved fast. Pressured by the archive's viral spread, 300,000 downloads by noon. They voted 13-2 to 4 reform, mandatory 24/7 body cams, a civilian oversight board with subpoena power, and a public database of officer complaints. Cheers erupted, but I felt no victory, only a step forward. Lena's DOJ pushed through the Carter Clause, mandating transparency in every stop, a nod to her relentless advocacy. I saw Vargas's face on a news screen, his jaw tight, his eyes cold, a man who'd buried truth for 30 years, now stripped of his title. The council announced his removal, citing patent suppression. His empire was crumbling, but I knew he wouldn't go quietly. Vargas, a master of spin, had already hired a PR firm, leaking memos framing us as disruptors. His villainy wasn't in his badge, it was in his belief that silence could outlast truth. Ruiz's suspension wasn't enough. I saw his smirk in my mind, his taunts a poison that lingered. Lena uncovered more. Vargas had mentored Ruiz, shielding him through 6 complaints, promoting him despite excessive force allegations. Ruiz wasn't just a symptom, He was Vargas's creation, a man who thrived on intimidating black drivers. His power rooted in the chief's protection, but the public wasn't silent. #Truth Unmuted hit 700,000 posts. Stories of stops flooding X from Los Angeles to Boston. I read one from a Miami barber, stopped for driving too slow, his dignity stripped on a curb. My heart ached, but it also burned. Lena and I launched Justice Snap, a mobile app for real-time misconduct reporting. Its interface simple: record, upload, share. By evening, 400,000 had downloaded it, a tool for every 25 to 55-year-old who'd felt powerless against a badge. Comments poured in. "This app's a game changer. Zara, you're saving lives." The backlash was fierce. 60 officers resigned, citing overreach. Their letters splashed across conservative blogs. "The badge is under attack." One read, signed by a veteran trained by Vargas. I felt their fear not of justice, but of exposure. Vargas, now ousted, held a final press conference, his voice smooth but hollow. "I served this city for decades," he said, no remorse, just defiance. "These reforms are a witch hunt." His words were a last gasp, but I saw his eyes a flicker of panic, a man who'd never faced a mirror. The crowd outside City Hall grew, their silent vigils projecting. Names on precinct walls: Keisha, Jamal, Aisha. I joined them holding a sign for Jaden. A teenager approached, her eyes wide. "You're Zara, right?" I downloaded Justice Snap. "I feel safer now." My throat tightened, not with pride, but with connection. This was for her, for Jaden, for every kid who'd drive these streets. Police. Your academies shifted, adopting our story as a case study. In a Fort Lauderdale training room, cadets watched my stop, my hands locked on the wheel. Lena's voice dismantling Ruiz's lies. The instructor, a former cop, paused the video. "This isn't about force," he said. "It's about accountability." I imagined Jaden watching one day, learning that his mothers fought not with fists but with truth. But the fight wasn't over. Vargas's allies, old guard captains, pushed back, leaking stories to frame us as anti-police. A local pundit called Justice Snap vigilante tech. I felt the sting, but Lena's resolve steadied me. "They're scared," she said, her hand on mine. "Good fear means they're listening." We hosted a community forum, not online, but in a Miami church. 200 packed in, sharing stories. A grandmother spoke, her voice cracking. "My son was stopped 10 times, never charged. I'm here because of you." I hugged her, my eyes wet, thinking of my grandmother's strength, her unbowed spirit. The app's impact grew. Reports flooding in, 500,000 downloads by week's end. A college student used it to record a stop in Orlando, her video leading to an officer's suspension. I felt her courage, her voice echoing mine, but Vargas's shadow lingered. Lena found a 2005 memo, his signature ordering targeted patrols in black neighborhoods, code for profiling. His villainy was structural, a blueprint for men like Ruiz, who'd learned to wield power without question. I saw Ruiz's face, his defiance, his belief that Vargas would save him. But the system was cracking, not just in Miami. Cities like Chicago and Atlanta adopted similar reforms, citing our archive. #Truth Unmuted hit 1 million posts, a movement we hadn't planned but couldn't stop. I thought of my grandmother's words: "Truth don't need volume, Zaret needs courage." We had it, and so did the nation. The vigils grew silent but seismic, projecting names across precincts nationwide. I stood at one in Coconut Grove, Lena beside me, our hands brushing. The pastor spoke, his voice low. Zara and Lena didn't just expose, they empowered. I felt the weight of his words, not as praise but as a charge. Jaden texted, "Mom, I'm proud." My heart swelled, but I knew this wasn't victory, it was progress. Vargas's allies met in private, plotting to discredit us, but their whispers couldn't outshout our truth. Justice Snap buzzed on my phone. A new report. A mother stopped in Tampa, her story now documented. I looked at Lena, her eyes fierce. "We're rewriting the rules," she said. I nodded, my resolve iron. Ruiz was suspended. Vargas was gone, but their system wasn't dead, it was wounded, and we'd keep pressing until it broke. The Miami dusk wrapped around me like a quiet promise. The sky bruised with purples as I stood in Coconut Grove Park, the city's heartbeat soft beneath my feet. I'm Zara Brooks, a 40-year-old black architect, and months ago I'd stared down officers Ruiz and Callahan, their racist taunts. "Whose car is this?" A wound that sparked a movement. Lena, my wife and DOJ civil rights attorney, had stood with me. Our archive exposing Chief Vargas's 47 buried complaints since 1998. Our Justice Snap app empowering 600,000 to document injustice. Now with Vargas ousted, Ruiz suspended, and reforms, body cams, civilian oversight boards, the Carter Clause reshaping Miami's streets, I felt a shift, not in the world, but in me. The #Truth UNMUTED movement, now 2 million strong, pulsed with stories from Seattle to Atlanta, a chorus of voices we'd helped free. My son Jaden, 16, texted me last night, "Mom, you're my hero." His words carried me, but I wasn't a hero. I was a woman who'd held silence until it roared. A woman whose grandmother's Birmingham marches taught her that truth, once spoken, never fades. Lena and I had stepped back, our Coconut Grove apartment a refuge where we could breathe. Without microphones, we turned down CNN interviews, TED Talks, and book deals not from fear, but because this wasn't about us. It was about Keisha, the pregnant nurse stopped in Dallas, whose town hall story broke my heart. About Jamal, the barber profiled for driving too slow, whose dignity we'd helped restore. Our legacy lived in quiet shifts, police academies where cadets studied my stop, my hands locked on the wheel, Lena's voice cutting through lies. In a Jacksonville training room, an instructor paused the video. Zara didn't fight, she made the system answer. I pictured Jaden watching one day, learning his mother's strength wasn't resolve, not volume. The Carter Clause, mandating transparent stops, was now federal policy, a testament to Lena's precision. But we didn't celebrate. We listened, working with survivors in community centers. Their stories raw, heavy, reminding me why we fought. Justice wasn't a trophy. It was a vow kept. The community carried our spark. In Miami's Wynwood, a mural rose, not of us, but of a bench etched with "Truth Speaks in Silence." I visited it, my sneakers soft on the pavement, my heart full. A boy, maybe 13, sat there, filming the mural with his phone. "You're Zara, right?" he asked, his eyes wide. "My dad says you made it okay to be seen." I knelt, my throat tight. "Your dad's the hero," I said. "He's teaching you to see." He grinned, and I heard my grandmother's voice. "Truth don't need a crowd, Zara, it needs roots." Those roots were spreading. Youth groups launched truth labs, workshops training kids like Jaden to document bias with apps like Justice Snap. A Tampa teen's video, uploaded via our app, led to an officer's suspension. Her post read, "Zara and Lena showed me my voice matters." My eyes stung, not with pride, but with connection. A generation rising. Unafraid, Vargas's shadow lingered. His villainy, a blueprint that didn't die with his badge. He'd joined a private security firm, advising departments on crisis control. His old tactics repackaged as expertise. Lena found a 2012 memo, Vargas praising Ruiz's targeted patrols, a dog whistle for profiling black drivers. Their bond was a pact, Vargas the architect, Ruiz his hammer, both believing silence would shield them. Ruiz now suspended, faded, but I saw his smirk in my mind, a ghost of cruelty tied to Vargas's power. The system they'd built wasn't GoNet, was wounded, and we'd keep pressing. #TruthUnmuted hit 2.5 million posts. Stories from rural Alabama to urban Chicago. A New Orleans mother shared, "Justice Snap saved my son's story." I felt her relief, her rage, echoing mine. Our app hit 700,000 downloads, a tool in every pocket, empowering the 25 to 55-year-olds who'd marched, tweeted, or quietly hoped for change. We launched a national Truth Stands campaign, urging daily acts of resistance, filming stops, mentoring youth, writing to councils. It wasn't loud, but it was seismic, resonating with those who'd felt powerless against badges. X posts showed notes at the mural. "Zara and Lena, you gave me hope." A retired Miami cop wrote, "I was silent too long, thank you." His words hit me, not as redemption, but as proof the system was human, and humans could change. Lena and I spoke at a truth lab in Overtown, not as icons, but as equals. A girl, 14, asked, "How do you face hate without breaking?" I paused, seeing Vargas's lies, Ruiz's taunts. "You don't fight hate alone," I said. "You fight with truth, with love, with us." Lena's hand on mine was a vow, our love a fire that burned steady. The campaign grew. Cities hosting Truth Stands walks, silent but fierce, signs bearing dates of buried stops. In Miami's Liberty City, I walked with Lena, our steps a rhythm of resolve. A grandfather joined us, his voice low. "My son was stopped in '97, never charged. You gave him justice." I hugged him, my eyes wet, thinking of my grandmother's arrests, her unyielding spirit. This was her fight, too, carried in every step. Jaden walked with us, his presence a promised he'd inherit a world we were reshaping. He whispered, "You're unstoppable, moms." My heart lifted, but I knew this wasn't the end, it was a beginning. Vargas's firm pushed back, calling our campaign divisive, but their words drowned in #truth, UNMUTED. Single quotes S-raw. Now 3 million strong. Training rooms evolved, our story a cornerstone. In Seattle, a cadet asked, "Why didn't Zara yell?" The instructor replied, "Her silence was louder than any scream." I imagined that cadet, Jaden's age, learning power is accountability, not force. But resistance lingered. A Vargas ally, a retired captain, wrote an op-ed, "These reforms erode trust." I felt his fear of exposure, not justice. Lena uncovered a 2017 directive, Vargas ordering discretion in black neighborhoods, fueling Ruiz's cruelty. Our truth was the antidote, spreading through apps, walks, workshops. I stood at the mural again, the boy's video in my mind. A note lay there, from a cop's son, "Thank you for truth." My throat tightened, hope rising, a system bending. Not broken, but bending. Reflecting on this journey, I see the lessons etched in my soul. Silence, I learned, isn't surrender, it's strategy, a weapon when wielded with purpose. My grandmother taught me courage, but Lena taught me partnership, our love a fortress against hate. Jaden taught me legacy, his pride a reminder that every fight shapes the future. Facing Ruiz's taunts, Vargas's lies, I learned that truth doesn't need volume, it needs roots, grown in community, nurtured by resolve. The system didn't break us. It bent because we refused to bow. I learned that justice isn't a moment, it's a movement, built on every voice we unmuted, every story we saved. If you were in my place, facing racial profiling, abuse of power, with your identity on trial and your partner's strength beside you, how would you approach it to achieve the best outcome? Would you hold silence like a blade, document every second, build a movement from your pain? I learned to stand, to record, to love fiercely, and to let truth speak louder than any badge. Lena and I walked through Coconut Grove Park, our hands brushing, the city's pulse soft. A child laughed nearby, her joy a promise. I thought of Keisha, Jamal, the grandfather, their stories now policy, now hope. Justice doesn't rush, I said, my voice barely above the breeze, but it knows your name. Lena nodded, her silence my anchor. A mother nearby told her daughter about the mural. They didn't let wrong win. The girl asked, did they win? The mother smiled. They made losing impossible. My heart soared, not with triumph, but with truth. Our legacy wasn't statues, it was benches, apps, walks, voices. Vargas's empire had cracked, Ruiz's cruelty a fading scar, but their system wasn't gone. We'd keep fighting, for Jaden, for that girl, for every name we'd freed, our silence a light that wouldn't dim.